Welcome to the Olathe Spark Starters podcast, where it is our mission to inspire innovative ideas and empower educators to cannonball into personalized professional learning. We're your hosts, Jordan Billings, 7th grade social studies from Indian Trail Middle School,
and Ryan Stevens, 8th grade social studies at Summit Trail Middle School.
Our goal for this episode is to help listeners understand small moves you can make to differentiate for students.
All right, and we are excited to welcome Melissa Cupp from Olathe West to the podcast. Welcome.
All right, thank you so much for having me today. This is exciting.
You want to do a little bit of background, a little intro for yourself?
Sure. I currently teach at Olathe West. I've been there since the building opened. I spent a couple years at ONW before that, and prior to that, I did middle school in Topeka, Shawnee Heights. So lots of good experiences.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Well-traveled. So this is the big topic. Everybody is huge buzzword and everything like that with differentiation. So why do you feel it's important? How does it help our students?
Teaching, it's not a one-size profession. It's sort of like when you go in to try on a piece of clothing and it says it's one size and you laugh because that's not your size. And that's true of our students, that each learner is a different size. And depending on the time of day, depending on your content area, and we just have to find a way to reach every student in our classroom, or at least offer them the ability to be reached.
Absolutely there. And every kid kind of does it a different way. And we've got to make certain that we find a way to let them show what they can do.
Correct. And that's been a process. This is 22nd year in the classroom. And I remember back when it was my way or the highway. And I got accolades for that. Like, that was an okay practice in my classroom. Right. And I look back and I cringe thinking about all the students that didn't fit into my round hole, because they were square peg, right? To go to that analogy.
I always think about the, I think it is it's a picture where they've got all these animals that are lined up, and it is you'll be graded on your ability to climb a tree, and one of them is fish, and Great. So and I know that for me, when I think about like differentiating, you think about that and say, okay, I have X number of classes, I have X number of students, and saying that like now, I have like 100 people and stuff that I have to take a look at. And so for a teacher, I know that can feel overwhelming. So where do I start with that?
Right. So to go to what the district's offered us, clearly if you're using Master Connect, that's your first step, because you've formally assessed a standard or a skill in your classroom, and you're going to know who didn't get it. And then the question, for me at least, is why did that not occur? Was it an issue with my teaching? Like if a bunch of them did not get it, then it was probably an issue with me. If it's an issue with just a few of them, maybe it is the product. So I'm just going to jump maybe ahead a little bit, that when my students are reading and are trying to show reading comprehension, if they have difficulty getting their ideas down on paper or writing complete sentences or whatever, that's not the skill I'm assessing. What I'm assessing is, did you understand character development in a short story? So why don't you come in during Power 50 and tell me about it? Last year I had a young man who really struggled with the process of putting pen to paper. That's what we say it, right? Or typing. And so when we were doing our free choice read, he would come to me in Power 50 and we would just talk through all the questions that the other students were turning in. And so I think that I do it too. We think of differentiation as, I'm going to have to sit at my desk and plan 5 different lessons and 5 different products and 5 different processes. And that's really not what I do at all. It's pretty much all, and probably you guys too, in the moment, you see the student struggling and you think, how could I fix this right now? Could I take a question off? Could I have them tell me orally? Could I let them draw a picture instead of writing a sentence? So a lot of it just depends on, for me, in those moment experiences. But you have to know your kids. If you don't know your students, you have to know sorry, Bobby, we always use you. Is Bobby just doing it because they're not motivated to do the assignment, or is Bobby not doing it because he has no clue how to show you that learning?
Absolutely. I love that logic. One of the things I talk to students about all the time is, hey, there's not a social studies standard about creating a Google Slides or writing a 5-paragraph essay. There is a social studies standard about understanding and recognizing how choices have consequences.
So what can we do to get there?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's one of the good things about our focus on standards now is, you were not thinking of those extra things that perhaps we used to put in our assignments that maybe were roadblocks for our students. Mm. So if a student can write me a paragraph but get the point across for citing textual evidence and can show me they could thoroughly do that, that is perfectly fine, while another student may be able to write me a whole literary analysis of the book. But you start at the standard, right? And you say, what's going to show learning, and then how can you show learning?
Absolutely. So when we're hearing about differentiation, it tends to come, for like content, process, product, environment, with all these things. Like I know we maybe have kind of talked about this, but some small steps that people can take to get that going, because I think we've kind of said, you have these huge standards and things that you're looking at, and sometimes that can be like, okay, now how can I take that into this process? Now I've made this one product, and then now saying, oh, now I have to make this product like basically every product needs to be the Swiss Army knife of education that has to have all these things on it. So some small stuff that we can do.
Sure. So I think some teachers, I would call them Uber planners, and they know right now what they're going to do in January. Of course, they're going to tweak it so it fits their students' needs. And in that case, I think that they could pre-plan. So if and sorry, I keep going back to reading things, the ELA background. I'd talk about science, but I'd sound like an idiot. So let's stick to what I know.
Absolutely.
If they know they're going to be reading short stories, or they have a class novel that's going to address some standards, then they could know up front to try to find some other versions of that novel, if they're an Uber planner. If they're more like me and they make some of their lesson plans as they're driving to school, then that's going to be more of a reflective piece as I'm wandering the room and seeing students struggle. So it's not that I feel like I'm dancing around the question, so maybe I am. You guys should call me on that. But I think the small step is first realizing that students want to do well.
Absolutely.
And if their behaviors are not showing that, it's because of other things going on in their life. It's because of their previous experiences, so on and so forth. So if we can kind of shove that aside and get rid of the excuse of they just don't want to do this for me, or they're just lazy, or whatever comes out of our mouth when we're frustrated, and I say it too.
Right.
Then we can start thinking about how could they. So how could we make that learning accessible? And that's what I always go back to. I know we're not talking about late work, which is also a hot topic. Yeah. But if we need to know if our students are learning, it's our job to find different products so we can see that. And one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that, we've talked about, how we kind of break up different things. And I mean, some of the stuff that you're talking about where, taking notes, and instead of like using words, maybe I draw pictures and stuff like that. Right. And we both, I know, use sketch notes in our class. I do it every unit, and giving that opportunity, for that artistic approach, and, for vocabulary, learning how to define terms, but then like building a Lego model to represent it. Beautiful. Or something like that. And learning that, some folks are easily able to, I read this, I recall it, everything is fine. But then it's the like, well, okay, but then I would have somebody that's a little bit more creative and like, here, I built this Lego thing, and like, this represents this word because of this. And to say like, well, that's learning right there. Exactly. That's you. I mean, and to me, I'm sitting there going like, that now gives an opportunity for kids to go above and beyond, instead of setting that bar really low in that, worksheet, just read and write down stuff.
Correct.
And to say like, well, now into that differentiation, we can flex our teacher muscles a little bit and kind of say like, okay, so you don't want to necessarily, how would you like to do, maybe it's like your presentation, for example.
Sure.
How do you want to do your presentation and whatnot? So like, maybe I want to build an iMovie that has different sound stuff and whatever, and like, that's how we're going to do it.
Definitely.
Okay. Sounds great to me.
And I feel like we're back at that era of student voice and choice, which is so important. So, for example, my students are always free reading a book, and I don't care what the book is. I don't care. I have some boys that constantly read, what are they like? Who was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and who was Jackie Robinson? And I think they kind of feel like, oh, I'm pulling one over on Miss Cup because we're freshmen and we're reading these, but they read them.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm winning quietly. I don't let them know that.
Right.
But what you're talking to, like student voice and choice, sort of relieves the pressure on the teacher that we have to decide this beautiful project and this beautiful product that's going to come out of it, and let's see what they do with it. Isn't that project-based learning?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Project-based learning is a beautiful vehicle for differentiation, especially if they're working in a collaborative group, because they can work towards their strength. If they know that I'm the creative person, then great. Somebody else is going to do the research and bring it to me, and I'm going to create something amazing at the end.
We were just kind of talking about group dynamics and things like that, and thinking about how, whenever I talk to students in my own class, we kind of talk about things and to say, well, what is everybody's strength?
Well, no, yeah, because then it was making me think, and now the moment's gone. But yes, the whole idea, like in PLCs. Right? An effective PLC is probably effective because everyone brings a different strength to the table, and we're all not having to do the same thing. So when I show up and I tell you guys, hey, man, my students, they really struggle with commentary. How do you teach it? You're teaching it differently than me, and you're helping me out so I can get to those students.
Yeah.
So,
and I always tend to think of differentiation as kind of being those things. When it's done well in the classroom, you can't see it in just 2 minutes. You got to spend some time in that classroom to really see when it's done well, when it goes beyond that surface level of, well, hey, everybody's doing these two different projects. Right. When you really see it designed specifically for those students' needs, I think that's the coolest thing about it, is when everyone says, well, I don't know if you're really doing it here. It's like, well, spend a little bit longer than 2 minutes and really watch and have a conversation with these kids. Right. It's amazing.
Right.
So we're all about tech. And that's a huge thing for us and everything. So you have a favorite tech tool that helps facilitate differentiation?
I am a fan of the Nearpod.
Okay.
Because it lets student work, and they can work at their own pace. So I've used it for note taking, so that if you need to go slower on slides, you can take more. Plus, you can easily give a student like closed notes. That's not really the term I want. What like.
Fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks, yeah.
So nobody notices if you're all working on the Nearpod on your own that you just are filling in some of the blanks and you're taking all the notes on your own.
Right.
So I do like Nearpod. I also like, and I believe Word does it too, Google has the voice to translate, and you guys probably know more because you're more techie than me. But I've shown that to several students who really struggle. Again, they can orally tell me about things, but they struggle with getting it on paper. Talk to your computer. Let your computer do that legwork. And I know some people cringe at that, and they say that we need students to practice writing sentences and grammar. And I agree with that. I'm not saying that's incorrect, but where am I going to start with it? That student's not going to do it for me. We all know that. We're sitting around this table knowing if I only give them one option, the option is going to be not to do it.
Exactly.
And we're not going to accept that.
And we don't want that.
No, we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think of probably one of my favorites there. I've heard Musella is an awesome resource because you can level the reading. But there's even my students how to use it. I don't know so much use it myself, but I show my students how to use rewordify.com, which allows them to copy and paste text into rewordify.com, and it will change the text, alter some of the more complex words, and break it down into simpler.
Yeah, my students have kind of just started taking a look at that like within these last couple of months, being able to, especially for being history with primary source documents and whatnot, you can take a section of the Declaration of Independence and you can put it in Rewordify, and it'll create a bunch of stuff. It'll create potential notes for you. It will read those tough to understand words, and it's a very good breakdown. And what I love about it the most, it's free.
Absolutely, it's free. And if you can get your students doing it to take the buy-in, so it's not something you created for them, but they've learned how to use this tool and say, I don't understand this part of this source, I'm going to put it into Rewordify. It'll read it to them if they need to hear it.
That sounds amazing.
And isn't it amazing? I hate to say, I really feel, have we gotten into self-differentiation?
Right.
Yeah. Is that even a thing? Did we create this?
I think right.
Okay.
Isn't that what we want students to do, to take control of their own learning?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you have students who have Grammarly on their, you have iPads. So maybe
we have iPads, yes.
I have students that have put Grammarly on their computers, and I think they think, again, they've pulled one over on me. And I'm like, good for you. That's what the world's going to do. Right. That's why Grammarly was created, so that business people sounded smart. So use it. I mean, if it's a resource out there, I think that's fantastic that students are self-advocating and they know when they need the help.
I love where you say, the students are like, ha ha ha, look at us using this. And then it kind of has us almost as like the somewhat evil maniacal genius and saying like, you did exactly what I wanted you to do. Right. And that is what we want them to do because, I know that when I have students that will come in and ask those kind of basic questions and stuff, and I'm like, you have this wonderful piece of technology right in front of you that can use that. And then that common thing of, is it because you don't know the answer? And I'm like, it's actually because I kind of get paid to help you find the answers.
Absolutely. I tend to envision almost team builders. We do this so many times with middle schoolers. And invariably, I create parameters, and they come up with a solution I never thought of that's even more efficient than what I would have thought of. And they think, oh, my goodness, I tricked you, Mr. Stevens. I found a way around. It's like, no, you found the most efficient way to do this assignment. That's great.
And I couldn't be more proud of the fact that you have done this because it means you have looked at this, you've engaged in it, and you've gone at it in a completely different way. And without things like differentiation, we would be kind of in the sort of, punch press worksheet land, for lack of a better term, even though I know that like there have been some, you can do some really cool and interesting things with worksheets and they're very efficient and stuff like that.
But we're talking about the kids who are really pushing the envelope on their own learning. I'm excited because I think since we're doing it, I just feel like this movement is going to let students figure out their way to learn and figure out their way to show the learning. I remember the first time I did a project-based learning, I was so excited because they were going to get to decide their own product, right? And that was going to be great because it was going to meet their own needs. And so we had the essential question and we had the research and I had some steps. And I said, okay, now you can present this however you want. And guess what all of them did?
PowerPoint.
They all did a PowerPoint. I couldn't have been sadder.
I tend to.
No, you've missed the point.
It's my favorite quote. I usually don't attribute it to the kids because they wouldn't know who she is, but it's one of my favorites there. I tell kids, I want you to put your creative spin on it. I want you to use your talents and strengths to create this. Because if I get 100 of the exact same thing, that's not a project; it's a recipe. And Alice Keeler's quote,
oh, yes,
absolutely.
It's how you. It's the litmus test for your project-based learning.
Right. Yes.
If it's all going to look the same, then you didn't do it. But that's differentiation,
right?
And we're trying to get them. I think that's an excellent point. We're trying to get them when we're allowing them to differentiate to fit your needs.
Right.
Show us the learning in the way that you can do it best.
Some people look at differentiation as like not being fair.
Correct.
Quote unquote.
Right.
Like what would you say to a teacher that would say that?
Well, I love the cartoon. And I've also seen the cartoon where they have the different size boxes and they're trying to look over the fence.
Yes.
And it's the fair not equal one, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd want to be very delicate because you'd want to maintain a relationship with that colleague, but the three of us sitting here don't do the same job. We don't stay the same hours every day. We don't have the same work expectation, but we all have the same purpose. So I just think sometimes teachers feel we have to do it because that's the way teaching is. And it's the way colleges are teaching us too.
Right.
Just start asking some probing questions like, well, how do you think that's going to work for so-and-so? Or what standards are you grading? And does your rubric show that? Just today I had a conversation with a new teacher, and I was so grateful that she asked me, and she was talking about page length, right? The dreaded page length on a paper.
Oh, right? I don't know any teacher that has not had to deal with the whole page length
and kids
thing.
want to know right away, whether they're your not so motivated kids or you're like top of the line kids, they've got to know. And I always tell them, well, you write until you're done saying what you have to write.
Life has to be flexible.
Right.
I mean, there's flexibility in almost any system.
Yes.
And so, being able to teach students something like that. And one of the things we talked about is that a lot of times when we see differentiation in the classroom, we get a better product than we would have anyway.
Absolutely. I think of the analogy I love to make is the accountants. They're sitting there, they're working on this spreadsheet there, and they say, okay, you need to do all of these calculations and put this result here, and they hand you a calculator and you do it over here. And then you have that accountant who looks at it and said, well, wait a minute, I can make Excel do this with all of these formulas here that can do all of that calculation for me. All I have to do is just enter the numbers in this one column, and it takes care of all of that for me. I don't have to mess with that calculator. Why would we ever want to punish that kid who figured out that solution that saves them time, saves us time, and still address the issue? They came up with a new way to solve the problem.
And if the assignments are super rigid like that, we all know that there's a certain percentage of students who just won't do it for whatever reason, whether it's lack of skill, lack of interest, lack of ability, time. And all we're proving to them by not offering them another opportunity is the self-fulfilling prophecy that you're stupid, you don't get it, you can't do school. Especially at the high school level, you guys see it too at middle school. I mean, it starts in that they come in and they're beaten down. Like they get it. They get that they're not good at reading. They get that they're not good at math. And the last thing they need is a 0 on a paper because they already knew they were going to get the 0, even if maybe they weren't. You know, I think of my daughter would have like lots of math problems every day, and there's students that just can't get that many done. So what's the harm in you get as many done in the hour and I take it from you? That's differentiation because you're going to lose the paper. You're not going to finish it anyway. You're going to walk in tomorrow. You're going to have nothing. I'm going to be frustrated. You're going to be frustrated. So I tell students that all the time. Work as hard as you can for the time we have left in class, and then I'll come get it. And then whatever you got done's good. It's awesome. And it works for all different levels of students. And then you start building that stamina, right? We all feel good when we've had a success. So then maybe the next time they do a little bit more.
We get to, help them set that pace and stuff like that. And so sometimes getting into that differentiation can help with that. And then eventually, again, we work them up to that higher level. And then what a great thing to take a look back at the end of the year and say, look how far you've come. Look at what you've done.
Yes.
I love it. You can't climb a mountain in 1,000 steps in one move. You got to take each step as it comes to you. You got to go. And I think as two gamifiers, one of our favorites of all time is when we bought into the system was school's a game. It's just a poorly designed one. And and we think about those kids who are good at playing the game of school, who figured out, this is how I can extend my essay by changing font size and by being
and
really
some of
wordy.
it is that efficiency. Exactly. And saying, okay, well, I'm going to be efficient, so I'll get, this done and whatever. So that goes
right. And I jump through this hoop and this hoop and this hoop, but then we think, did they really learn it? So we got, this has been a great conversation here.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, so if listeners are going to want to learn more from you, where can they find you?
Well, I do have a Twitter, but I'm pretty bad about tweeting out. It's at @cup_OW. And then clearly my email is just mdcup@olatheschools.org. I like to tell my kids I'm a doctor and see who gets it. Only a few. I know. I'm like, and then I'm like, good, you're paying attention. Yay for me.
That's on that list of bad teacher jokes. We all had to take that class, right? I mean,
I think we all did. I think so.
And just to entertain ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, so we love to end this with somebody who's been a spark starter for you, somebody who gets you jazzed up and excited about teaching and the things that they do in the classroom, or maybe inspiration. You got somebody to share with us?
Definitely. My go-to when I need to bounce an idea off someone is Marty Ortman. She happens to be my department chair. I taught with her at O&W and then at West. And even just today, like we eat lunch together, and typically part of lunch is one of us running through like a little lesson or an idea, and then we help each other out. And so she's my go-to spark starter.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Okay, well, we're going to, I think, put a bow on this episode. Right. So, Melissa, thank you so much for coming. This is an amazing
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
As always, check out the most recent aim to nominate a Spark Starter. There's a tab and a form to fill out where you can nominate somebody who's sparking innovation around you so that they can be recognized in the district.
We'd love for you to reach out to us on Twitter. You can follow us at Olathe Spark. I'm Jordan Billings. You can follow me at Mr. Billings Class.
I'm Ryan Stevens. You can follow me at Coach_Stevens. That's STEPHANS. Until next time, keep sparking innovation.